Interesting take here on weighs into this big theme, which at times has really dominated parts of the market with the pure OEMs, the automakers, Tesla and related companies. But talk about what you like in this general ecosystem here.
Sure. Well, at first hand, I think we have more than our fair share of old chip heads. And so we're always looking for the less obvious play on something. And if you take it apart and look at the components, sometimes that's the way to get there. In the late 90s, you could make more money off of the chip ICs, the communications IC stocks than you could off of owning Cisco, for example. So how do you play that with an EV? Look for the power electronics. The power electronics demands in an electric vehicle are pretty daunting. You have to take a lot of power out of a very limited amount of batteries. And that favors some kind of exotic technologies. And our favorite there is silicon carbide. And our favorite plays there are STMicro, onsemi, and Wolfspeed.
Yeah, STMicro and onsemi and the others that you've mentioned here. Obviously, they have had a pretty good run for a while. Maybe not Wolf, but it just seems as if it's not necessarily undiscovered. But you actually think that obviously there's going to be a longer life to these trends.
Right. STMicro's got a market cap, I think, 47, 48 billion. At the other end of the spectrum, Wolfspeed's got a market cap of about 12 billion. The reason we like Wolfspeed better than the other two is it's really a pure play on silicon carbide. The others have great automotive exposure, great power electronics exposure, but they're less of the pure play on that. Wolfspeed, by the way, it had a monster year last year. It went from less than 50 to, I want to say 120, 130 bucks. This year it's been more flattish. So I think there's plenty of room for it to have a really big year next year. And
Kevin, what is silicon carbide?
So if you go back to your chemistry, high school chemistry, silicon has 4 valence electrons. So does carbon.
Clearly not my best.
Well, so it's an exotic material. Here's what you really need to know. If you can do something in pure silicon, you do it there because it's really cheap, it's really well understood, there's all this infrastructure built up. But there are times when you just can't use silicon. It's just not the right material. It has to do with quantum physics and band gaps and certain voltage levels. What this really means is if you make your power electronics out of silicon carbide, it's more efficient, it drains your battery more slowly, it means your EV has greater range. That's all you really need to care about. Silicon carbide equals greater range on your EV, and that's going to be one of the big features as everyone gets into this market.
Kevin, you mentioned that, as a firm, of course, you have ample exposure to, lots of different areas of technology that are more familiar. But your emphasis on these areas, does it suggest at all that you think some things are played out or they're fully valued, whether it's social media or, traditional semis or any of the other areas that you may have been, playing more as a core holding?
Well, our intellectual Achilles heel is getting out too early. So, we got out of the FANG stocks probably 2 years ago. So, oops. And that's not to say that these other popular trends don't have a lot of steam left in them. I'm sure they do. But we just figure that you don't need to hire us as money managers to go out and buy Facebook and Google and Amazon and all those names you already know. So we try to get in and dig and find something that's a little less obvious.
Josh, where are you on the trade of 2022 of silicon carbide or just broader EV trends next year in general?
Yeah, I'm loaded up with silicon carbide, but I took physical delivery, so I'm not in the equity, I'm in the commodity. Hey, Kev, have you ever taken a look at the charging equipment companies? I own a little bit of this thing, ChargePoint, CHPT. Yep. I don't know that much about it, quite frankly, but I looked at EVgo, EVgo. I looked at Volta. Is there money to be made there? What do you think?
There was a trade in there because they thought Buy Back Better was going to pump a lot of money into charging networks. But let's speak as investors, not as traders. We actually have an EV truck company in our portfolio, and one of our senior executives there came from ChargePoint. So he's kind of my secret weapon. I'll call him up after this and get the scuttlebutt. But I think the issue here is a pretty simple one for these charging networks. Most people don't drive across the country and use a network. Most people just go from their home to their office to the store or whatever. So they want a big network out there, but they hardly ever use it. And I'm not quite sure that's going to play out that smoothly.